Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session. This is making excellent making excellent rehearsals happen with level 1 to 3 music. And it's going to be a little bit different, different take perhaps than the companion to this that Dave Harris is teaching right now, which is same title and topic, but with level 3 to 5 music or advanced music. I encourage you to take a look at, in fact, I encourage you to take a look at all the videos of all the sessions and pick up things that you can pick up from different presenters and just look at things across the way. All right. My name is Bob Avant, and I am privileged to be the handbell director at Baylor University. I'll be starting my 12th year. I also direct the Austin Handbell Ensemble, which is an auditioned ensemble in the Austin area, and I've been doing that for 25 plus years. And the plus part is COVID, so I don't know how you count COVID or not, but anyway, 25 years there. And collectively at several churches, I have worked with led church groups for about 30-ish, 30 plus years, 32 or so, somewhere in that range. So, I've been doing a lot of rehearsals over these years and picked up a few things. And so that's what the topic is for today. So we'll jump right in. And a pre-warning, I have not presented this exact session before, so I don't know for sure about the timing. So we may either go under or I may have to squeeze to get things in. I don't know. It's going to be one or the other, and we'll just discover as we go. So thank you for being here. And all right, so let's get started. First thing is, as far as an introduction, what is success as it pertains to a handbell rehearsal? How do you define that success of a handbell rehearsal? I think of it as it is an incremental increase in technical ability and musicality from one rehearsal to the next, while staying on time, on task, on track for a peak performance at the right time. So to me, a successful session is one that generates a movement towards our overall goal and in the time allotted. So good rehearsals do not just happen. They are the result of awareness of the current status of each ringer, the knowledge of the end result, and the use of effective teaching strategies. So for this session, the content that I have for you is organized as such. It's going to be making appropriate music selections, followed by planning rehearsals, followed by executing the rehearsal plan, post-rehearsal analysis, problem solving in level 1 to 3 music, and then a summary. And let me say that one other comment, that I do not see any of you. All videos are muted. All your mics are also muted. So I see you. I do not see you. I do not hear you. If you do want to interact, throw something in the chat window. I do have that open up on my screen and can look at it occasionally. So we'll have to operate in that way this time. Okay. All right. Making appropriate music selections, and I put this here on purpose because it offers some precursor information as far as knowledge of your situation, because you want to put something that is appropriate in front of the group, something that is potential for them to be able to do well with, versus something that is either too easy or is way too hard and over their heads, and they will not get a good result. So it's got to be that sweet spot of something in the middle. So, what are the reasons to select a piece? Well, you may actually be constrained by some criteria that will color your selections. One of those might be that it has to fit the liturgy. So you would filter out everything else except for that which you need to speak to through your music. It might need to fit within the performance of a theme for a concert as a criteria. Doing pieces about stars, and so all your pieces would need to be about stars or space or something of that nature, for example. Um, the the other aspects about appropriateness of music selections, they all needs it needs to be done in a way that is uh, be able to be within reach of a successful performance given a reasonable length of preparation time. It has to be possible that they can do well. And in order to help people feel good about what they're doing, they need to succeed. And so your music selection ultimately determines that their level of success and their ability to feel good about being where they are with you as their leader. And of course, there are that great category called other. Why you would select a piece, other, because it has to do with a unique situation that is yours and yours only. So there are lots of reasons to potentially select a piece. You could also, and I do this one personally, I select music to put in the folders that we would never perform, but I put it there as a teaching piece. I know that I want to grow my group, and so I find a piece on a topic that I want them to grow into, and I find a piece that will focus on that. It could be way out of character for the ensemble. For example, if you only do um, sacred selections, well, this could be a secular selection. It's a learning piece. It's something you put in front of them, and you focus on certain skills and abilities. And again, I recommend that. I do that myself quite a bit. The piece, to be appropriate, also needs to provide challenges to um, the ringers equally. Your strongest ringers need an attainable challenge. Your weakest ringers need an attainable challenge. And the group as a whole needs an attainable challenge. And you might think it's hard to find something. You've got two or three all-star type of ringers, and you've got two or three that just walked in the door the previous week. How in the world can you pick music for that? Well, thankfully, in the repertoire, there are lots of pieces that have offer strengths, um, difficulty sections in certain ranges, and offer more basic sounds in the other. I don't think that they plan it that way. It's just the way the music is arranged. Maybe it originates at. For example, I know that a lot of the pop songs that get arranged for handbells are a combination of crazy melody rhythm things that are going on up top and keeping those people very, very, very busy. And for the mid and low range, there's a lot of whole notes, half notes, maybe a lot of mallet eighth notes, the same note over and over, a lot of repetition kind of thing. So, as an example, a lot of the pop songs arrangements offer simpler sounding and reading selections in the bass through mid-range or so, and then much more complex up top. So that's an example of being able to pick a piece that would challenge a portion of your group. So you would also look in selecting music, you're also looking for a blend of technical demands and musical demands. I have to add here that, as our title of this session indicates, there are different levels in music. And today we're focusing on that which is important to level 1 through level 3 ringers and directors. And of course, there is level 3, 4, 5 as well for the more advanced. But this level system, we need to understand that the leveling system is one that is was created by publishers of handbell music, handbell arrangements, to give some hint to the potential users of that music or purchasers of that music as to if that's something that their group can do. If they advertise APs at level 2, they expect that a level 2 type of group can perform that. What the levels indicate, though, is a reference to the technical difficulty of the music, the physical demands of the music, the number of skills that are required for it, the complexity of the rhythms, the tempos, if they're crazy fast or very, very slow, that the level of difficulty that's printed and advertised out refers to all of those performance-based things. It has nothing to do with musicality. And there can be some level 2 pieces that are, in my estimation, even a level 5 musical challenge. It's unwritten, unspoken, but if you really want to dig in and play a certain piece extremely musical, it might be a very big, tall order to do so, and technically it's a level 2 piece. And conversely, there could be a level 5 piece that is all techniques and no musicality. So you have to kind of look at things and take into consideration the piece itself, and yeah, the leveling system will help guide you, but your group also has a certain uh, ability within itself to be musical. You may have degreed musicians in your group, and you may have people who last read a staff of lines in music in 8th grade. And that would have been years past. So, you have to think about these things and look carefully when you're selecting this music, so it is appropriate. So essentially, what you're doing when you select music, you are seeking a piece that supports the growth and success of the ensemble while maintaining the interest of the ringers through technical and musical challenges. Embedded in that statement was the phrase, while maintaining the interest of the ringers. You can lose a ringer very quickly who is very, very gifted with handbell ringing, for example, if you put a piece in front of them that their part is half notes and whole notes. And conversely, you can lose a ringer in your group if they are only at half note, whole note level, and you ask them to play some 16th notes at a very fast clip. So appropriateness is a huge factor in selecting music. All right, planning rehearsals. Let's talk through the planning side of things. First thing I always say is know the ringer's skills, their abilities, and their needs. If you just enter a room and say, okay, open up to measure 48, let's go, and you have no clue what you have in front of you, number one, you have no idea if they're going to be successful, and number two, you're probably gonna inappropriately give them challenges. In other words, they will have the problem of the the talented ringers will be bored, and the new ones will be overwhelmed. So know your ringers' skills and abilities and needs. Also, you need to know the current status of the group, kind of the average of all of your ringers put together, and kind of know where your groups, where it sits in respect to lots of different factors. And I'm going to refer you, I won't talk about it, I'm going to refer you back to my previous session that I just completed a little while ago that was about, well, it was about this. There's a chart, and it's a handout that you can download as well. And this has to do with developing a group from entry level to exceptional level and the stages in between. And part of the result of working with that chart is to establish where your group is. So that's what I'm speaking of here. We can connect back to that previous session and learn how to improve your group through that. So the third thing I want to say about the prerequisite for planning rehearsals is know the overall short and long-term goals for the group. Improving a group means that you know that they need improvement, i.e., you know their start point, and you want them to improve, but you want to them, how do you know what improvement looks like unless you can identify the goal that you are seeking with your group? So all the improvement takes place in the distance between where you start and where you want to end up. It's all that inner stuff. That's the area where you live. If you are improving a group, you're working through there. So, and of course, if you need to know what you're wanting to improve in order to incorporate into a rehearsal. All right, music selection, which we've already spoken to a degree. Let's see if there's anything new here. Yeah, I will say that using this phrase again, selections that you choose should be considered as attainable challenges. I have to tell you, of course, through a lot of experience, that ringers live for challenges. They love to be challenged. They love to overcome and be successful and be victorious in these challenges. They do not like being defeated by those challenges. So it's always best to find pieces that you can offer those challenges to them. And again, it's not easy. It takes a lot of effort at that music selection to do so. All right, so here is an overview look at a general rehearsal structure. I'll go into more detail in a moment, but just there's a little detail here, but that's okay. So in general, the way I would encourage you to structure a rehearsal, that you start with a warm-up and development time. In the warm-up, depending on your needs, but your warm-up can include physical stretches, breathing in, breathing out, bending knees, just kind of doing some physical things to warm up the muscles of the body so that they are ready to go. And the companion to this time period in the warm-up time period is that's your development time. That's the time where you grow the skill levels of the ringers. Followed with, okay, so let's say you introduce a new skill. This still in this warm-up time, the transition from the warm-up time to the rehearsal time is through the application of that new learning. So if you learned a new skill set for that day in that warm-up and focused development time, to make effective learning happen, you immediately have to apply that new learning in context of the music that they're actually looking at in the folder. making that as a connection is incredibly critical for long-term and real learning. I will say that without that kind of connection, that the mindset of the ringer becomes, okay, we're in the warm-up time. Yeah, we're learning something new. Great, check. We've done that. Put that aside. Now let's go to the first piece. And then you get to that point in that piece where that new learning is to take place, and discover that they can't do it because they have not made that connection with the learning content. So very, very critical. Immediately after that teaching time and the warm-up module, immediately go to a point in the music that's in the folder and apply and connect that new learning to that existing piece. And that way you have a chance of longer term learning happening, as in when you get to that real rehearsal part on that piece, it should go better. All right. Next up on the general overview of the structure of rehearsal, I have rehearsal time with first piece. In general, this is, you would want to pick, if you have multiple pieces in the folder, this is the harder one. You want to start with the harder one first. It's just while they're freshest and their learning sensors are all engaged, go with this one first. I would recommend starting with, on that first piece, a quick review, verbal review of all that was learned on that first piece, the last rehearsal. So we're trying to jog memories and trying to connect new skills that they picked up the previous time more into the long-term learning mode here. To support that, I generally would recommend giving the individuals of the whole group, say you've got about 2 minutes-ish that you can look at the piece and remind yourself of the things that you learned from last time. Remember the parts that were difficult and focus on those parts and practice those on your own. So for 2 minutes, you've got chaos in the room, but it's a good chaos. As an option, you could start with how the last rehearsal ended. If it was a straight run through, you would start that way. If it was working on a specific, particularly difficult section, you would start on that section. Again, you're trying to connect for long-term learning and through this process. Again, through this is in the first piece. So through careful score study, including an understanding of preparation issues, you would list the specific measures that you want to work on to improve with the first piece. So I have like a spiral notebook or spiral, notebook. And I jot down for our rehearsal the things that we do. I plan this out. And so I write down the first name of the first piece, and then I put down the measures that I want to go through specifically from here to here, and specific needs on that as well. And then go on, and I'm identifying the next set of measures, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is to basically work on the worst measures in the way of performance currently, so that they get better up to the level of the easier measures. So you want to have an evenness of sound at the end of your work. And so this is kind of the approach that we do. I would also, well, we'll talk about that approach later. Good. So, and what you're doing when you work through this piece is you're seeking consistent quality. And by that I mean that again, that the what was the worst is now okay. One example I'll share is say Stars and Stripes, the march. So if you happen to be doing Stars and Stripes, it's a fun piece, by the way. And you're going through, and your group is doing all right. They can go bum 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 at tempo. That's great. And they go through a little bit further. It's all at tempo, great. And they get to the piccolo section part, and all of a sudden, no way that they're going to be able to play that at that tempo. And so the best they can do is at a tempo that's like 20 beats slower. Well, that's not even or consistent in quality of performance. So what you try, that's a great example of being not good. So what you wind up having to do, your goal is to get that which is most difficult up to the level where everything else resides already, so that you have a consistent layout. You might end up, in sort of a Stripes example, of playing the entire piece at a much slower tempo than you originally thought you might on the opening measures, because it's consistent throughout. So that's your goal with that first piece. In your rehearsal, I would also encourage, and again, this is all overview stuff. We'll talk specifics in a bit. I would also encourage the inclusion of a challenge piece. And this is one that would take perhaps longer to work through, and is a longer term goal. But this is one that offers a more significant amount of challenges to all of the ringers. And again, you're trying to grow your quality of ringers, and grow the quality of the end result. So this is one way to do it. You press the issue and really try to challenge the group. You at the end of the rehearsal, you would review the success of the rehearsal. You just say, hey, we spent a lot of time today on piece number blah blah blah, whatever it is, and we did pretty well. We made a lot of strides, and we did really well on that. And celebrate that success with them. And to close out a rehearsal, you can end with a short example of that which they have achieved, or a longer section, if depends on how where you are in proximity to your performance. But a bigger section, again, to highlight the improvement that has taken place. All right, so let's talk about how to execute that rehearsal plan. That's the overview. Now, what do you do within? Specifically, excuse me. So one of the things I do is I try to set the expectation visually. And I do that by, remember, I have that spiral notebook, and I write down what I'll be working on, and which measures and what piece and all that. So what I will do is I will put the name of the pieces on the board and start with the measure that we're going to be starting on. And if I've got multiple pieces in the folder, I have listed just those pieces that I'm going to be working on. It gives the ringers an opportunity to see what the rehearsal goal is. It's not going to be everything, but we're going to work on specific pieces, specific measures, and we're trying to chip away at that which we need to improve upon. So I do that. I write that on a teaching board, and certainly you need a teaching board, a dry erase board. Try to avoid chalkboards, true chalkboards. They generate dust, which is not good for the instrument or the lungs. So dry erase boards are great, and have it up there so you can refer to it, write on it, and teach with it. So please have a teaching board. Again, the warm-up time is a time for physical body warm-up with stretches, and the development time, which is also part of this warm-up time. So in the development time, you would review the existing skills for improvement, such as, and these are skills that they already know, but you're trying to develop. Let me back up just a second and comment about that. In the last session, I really emphasized this, but I'll say it again because I think it's important that as individuals who are learning, if it, directors do this as well, ringers do this, humans do this. If you reach a point of development that you are pressing towards success, and you reach an element that you say, that's where I've done it. That's as good as you'll ever be. It's not until you push a little more, just to try to do a little more improvement on something, make it a little bit better, that real improvement takes place. And so, as in handbell ensembles, we want to always achieve something, but also know that we want to press a little bit more and raise that bar continually as we go. So the point about this development time then is that you can review the existing skills that are being called upon coming up and really hone them even more, really work to make even greater improvements in these. This is a time where you work on musicality skills such as dynamic control and melodic line shaping. Yeah, they can kind of do a crescendo, but wow, wouldn't it be great if it was really super crescendo? And what does that mean? And how do you teach it? And what does it sound like? That's what you try to convey to your ringers is what that means to you, and you want them to convey that back to you through their performance. But that's the time you really work on it, knowing that in the piece that's coming up, they will see that need and that extra honing in. Again, you're taking where they are and trying to make them improve just a little bit. That will transfer over to the piece. During the same development time, you're working on the ringing form just to make sure that everybody is looking the same as they ring. Same form, the same strike point in front. Oh, there we go. Strike point. I can't do it sitting down. Oh, well. Same strike point and follow through. And there are exercises and tricks of the trade to help with that. But that's the time that you would do that. You would also use this time to really try to increase a particular skill that is not really thought of all that much, but it's called ringer's eye contact. And this is the time where you would really work on establishing their abilities to look ahead in the music and ring in the moment, to look ahead and yet ring in the moment. Because the opposite of that is that they are looking at the note that they are ringing. And when they look at the same note that they are ringing, they are completely surprised by what follows the next note. And it leads to all kinds of chaos. So the skill set is looking ahead of where they are and then developing techniques to teach that particular thing, which is not the topic of this class, but that's when you do teach that. In this development time, you would also take a look at more long-term skills that will be needed down the road. The long-term skills are ones that it's a physical thing. It takes a while to really become more physically adept to accomplish some of these. So just working on it in a rehearsal and then asking for that to happen in that same rehearsal is probably not going to be successful. So you have to start earlier on some of these types of skills and develop the skill. And then at some point down the road, you put that piece of music that calls for that long-term learning to have taken place. Specifically, examples include 16th notes, fast 16th notes, slow 16th notes, fast notes in general, however they're written. Another long-term skill that is to be developed over a period of time is rhythmic understanding and development. The more complex rhythms that you can teach them and teach them how to read them, the more complex potential you have of the complexity of the music that you purchase and put in front of them. The other long-term skill that I would mention here is more advanced multiple bell skills. Level 1 music, you don't see multiple bell skills needed. It's bells in hand for the most part. You pick up the correct bells to start with, and you never have to put one down. It is that easy. Level 2, sometimes now you have to put one down and pick up a new bell, an accidental or maybe a key change or something. Level 3, you're now needing multiple bell skills, and that is 3 bells in a row, 4 bells in a row, 5 bells in a row in a sequence, and how to deal with that. This development time for long-term skills is the place for working on these things well in advance of their need in the music. And of course, in this development time, this is the time where you would introduce anything that would be new to them. Yeah. So yeah, anything new. As a strategy, teaching strategy for all of this, if it's a new skill or even if it's old skills, you're just trying to hone in this development time, you can do that with the full group. Or if you have some outstanding ringers and you've got some new ringers, why don't you solve several issues at the same time? Ask one of the experienced ringers to take one of the lesser experienced ringers out and work with them individually to improve that particular skill or those skills that you're working on. Number one, the focus of one-to-one will get you further with that individual than if they were within the full group. Number two, it allows for that person who is very experienced to be very involved and very active in working with the improvement of the group by helping that individual. It makes them feel good. They have a good feeling for having been trusted with that. You respect their talent, and they know that, so that's a good response from that end of it. And the teaching benefits are tremendous when you can do it on a one-to-one basis. So that's a strategy I would consider important to use. Also, in this teaching area, I would generate homemade exercises or teaching modules based on the application of the new skill as it's found in the music. For example, if it's a tricky rhythm in the music coming up, that you would just pull that rhythm out and focus on that on the teaching board or whatever methodology you have, and focus on that new information and new things and try to teach that for success there, and of course immediately apply it through the music that would follow. And that is, as I said before, extremely important that any new learning is immediately applied in the music that they will see. Make that connection between development time and performance time. All right. So when it comes to this rehearsal of the first piece, how do you approach this? Your process really should be that you're going to try to chip away at anything that doesn't sound right, that it doesn't sound correct, but it also doesn't sound to the level of the rest of the music. So you're looking for the parts that are in the most need, and then you would start with those. And generally, I work from the end in those little small measure segments backwards towards the beginning. If you always start at the beginning, you get better at what you practice. So if you always start at the beginning, you're going to be really good at the beginning, and you may or may not have ever consistently gotten to the end. And that will be the shakiest as a result. So the strategy I like, because I like to leave an audience thinking that we just played solidly because they just heard the ending, it was solid. So play from the back end first, work out all of those issues first, and then go back and you do the larger segments throughout. Remember that the goal for each rehearsal is improvement, not running the piece from the first measure to the last measure. So a rehearsal strategy of always starting at measure 1 with the goal of always getting to the last measure on every rehearsal is not as effective as working on snippets and getting those improved and then work larger sections together until you can do the full group. The exception to that is if you are getting very close to a performance and you really do need to practice continuity. In that case, part of the rehearsal strategy is to practice going from cover to cover, if you will. But that's the only reason to go cover to cover, is to practice going cover to cover, first to the end. So as you go through this piece and any piece, you need to insist on the quality standard that you hold for what you're hearing back. The amount of technical success and musical success. You've got a level in your mind of what sounds good and what is acceptable, and you need that's your threshold of quality. And as you go through your piece that you're working on, by working through these sections and making them get better as a result, you are communicating that level of quality standard to your ringers. And that is how that's done. You want your ringers to feel about quality the same that you do. And the only way that happens is if you show them through you demonstrate to them through your actions the level of quality that is acceptable, and you rework and reteach that which is not. And you can tell them why, that we need to get this better so it'll sound good with the rest of the in context of everything else. But that's important to have everybody on the same page as you with respect to the level of quality. So, and still in the same piece, you would check for learning. You would run the sections that you have focused on, and you would evaluate what you're hearing. And if it meets that your own quality of standard that is sought, that's great, and you move on. If it didn't meet your level of quality, then you have to reteach. And when you reteach, you're doing this because the understanding is that humans learn through different ways. Some people, I mean, you could say one thing to a group, and a good portion of the group will go, yeah, all right, it makes sense. I can see that. Great. And another portion will go, I don't know what you're talking about. So sometimes you have to teach and reteach in different ways, saying the different ways to teach a very same content so that everybody hears it and understands it in the way that their learning style is. So when you have to reteach, you try to alter your original approach. It's not easy. You have to be creative and think about the people involved to help with this. So after you've retaught, then you would repeat the effort on that same section and reevaluate. Hopefully they will have gotten better by this time, and you move forward. Once you work on those little bitty sections and work those out, then now you start adding to bigger sections. And again, you always evaluate and reteach as needed. Great. Moving on to the second piece, which would be an easier selection if you have multiple pieces in the folder. Again, to start this one, allow for the momentary personal review of the piece. Remind the group of the previous learning, just as we did the previous first piece. And as a review, it's easier, remember, play through the sections that were worked on previously and check for that quality. Reteach if needed. Long-term learning didn't occur. It has to do, if long-term learning does not occur, it has to do with the teaching strategy. And so if the long-term learning didn't happen, then you've got to reteach in a way that encourages that long-term learning. So not remembering how to play something the next time is not on the ringers as much as it is on the director. I'm kind of glad I'm not seeing people, because I'm sure I just offended some people. Sorry about that, but that's true. I think that that if a group, after having been taught it by you, still struggles, and you hear that same struggle, it's really up to you to reteach creatively so that they learn it, so that they do not struggle. It's really on you, more than it is on them. So I'll throw that out there. Rehearsal time with the next piece follows that same prep and process. A wrap up to the rehearsal time. This is a time for positivity. You want the ringers to feel good about their efforts and realize how much progress was really made. You want them to leave the room happy, essentially, and not frustrated. So you would remind the group what was worked on, including what progress was made. And you would also probably play through a sample of their good work so that they can see themselves how well they have achieved, how much they've achieved in that session. And again, positivity here, celebrate that success. I would also leave with the idea that you want them, in the best case scenario, to start the next rehearsal where they left off this one. So by saying it that way, you're telling them, you're encouraging them to have long-term learning. Don't just forget this. Remember how it's done for the next time. And that companion to that is that in this rehearsal, you have started with a reminder time for them to remember the previous rehearsal. So both these things dovetail together. You make any closing announcements, and then you take care of the handbells. Wipe them down, pack them if you have to pack them, whatever you have to do there. All right. So that's the structure of a rehearsal. Post-rehearsal analysis. As soon as possible, make a quick assessment of what was learned, not learned, and what is needed for the next rehearsal. This kind of throws some ideas out there while it's still fresh on your mind, so that you can come to that in a few days and reread that and remember what was done. And then that will help you construct what you do for the next rehearsal. So when do you do that? Somewhere between 4 and 72 hours before the next rehearsal, you would draw up your rehearsal plan. Probably not 4 hours, definitely not 1 hour before. But give it some thought. Use your scores, look carefully through it, think through how your group has done or has been playing on these, and make your assessment about what is needed the most, what needs the most work, and then work that content and plan for it. So yeah, probably the day before is a good time, or any time for you, for that matter. That's the post-rehearsal analysis. All right, I'm going to skip topics now to problem solving and level 1 to level 3 music. which is our topic really of the day. Here are the characteristics of level 1 music. And I'm saying this because this is the pool of techniques and skill sets that are important if you want to do well in level 1 music. And we'll do the same for level 2 and level 3 in just a moment. But, focus on these aspects, because if you go into rehearsal just thinking, I just want everything to get better all the time, all things related to handbell to get better, it's hard to do all things in one rehearsal. But you can pick and choose the things that you want to get better and focus on those. So if you're doing level 1 music, what you are expected to see are very basic rhythms down to maybe slow eighth notes. Not fast ones, but slow eighth notes. No bell changes, very basic techniques, and overall unison rhythms in the accompaniment. So the music itself is written very, very simply. It has a melody, yeah, but the accompaniment is the same rhythm in chords, perhaps. Maybe there's a transitional passing note here or there, but it's essentially the same rhythms throughout. That's expected to see what you expect to see in level 1 music. Overall, it's not complex musically, technically. It's not complex. So potential problems and skills to address in level 1 music. So if you are a level 1 group, you need to work on these things. Basic form, vertical timing. And that means alignment. You want chords to sound like, and I do this gesture with my group. We want chords to sound like this, not like that, right? You want it to go chord instead of bling on a sound, okay? So you're working on level 1 because it has lots of whole notes and half notes and slow quarters and things. Each one of those notes is an opportunity for misalignment. So one of the basic skills that you are really trying to perfect is playing together as a group. Part of that, by the way, is related to the ability of the conductor to conduct clearly with that. So be sure to practice conducting skills as well in this process. The last thing I want to say about level 1 music, things to start being concerned about, the beginnings of balance. It's a fairly simple melody and a fairly simple accompaniment, but think about this. A melody generally gets played by a single line of notes as it goes along. An accompaniment, so that's one person playing one note at a time. The accompaniment could be a chord where 5 people, 6 people are playing on that chord each and every time. So the numbers are not in our favor. If everybody played double F, the 6 people playing the same chord will sound much louder than a melody. So in level 1 music, this is the opportunity to explain melody, how it needs to predominate, and accompaniment, and how you want to tuck it away just a little bit. Even if the music says generically MF, that doesn't mean for all. That just means overall. So the beginnings of balance, these are the things to teach in level 1 music. For level 2 music, characteristics of level 2 music, it's more complex with its rhythms. Maybe some dotted notes, dotted quarter, eighth notes for sure, maybe dotted eighth, sixteenths, but more complex. Maybe some ties across bar lines or within syncopated lines. More complexity for the rhythms are taking place. There are some easier bell changes. In the first session of the day, we talked about the technique of ringing a bell, putting that one down, and picking up another bell with the same hand. An accidental just is occurring. So in level 2 music, we're seeing some of that type of put down and pick up as a skill that is needed for that. Not so much weaving just yet, but just put down, pick up. We're seeing the need for more techniques. So the repertoire of the ringer's skill sets needs to probably blossom a little bit more for level 2 music. Uh, there is multi-layered music with melody and accompaniment lines. So you would see a melody going on, and within the accompaniment, you'll have like a tenor line with its own rhythm and a bass line with its own rhythm. So they're not the same. They're all accompaniment. They're chords or counter melodies or something, but it's a little more complex. So we're seeing that type of that's what defines level 2 music, those kinds of things. So here are the things, the skills, and potential problems to address with level 2 music. So these are the things to work on if your group is at level 2. You would assume basic form with everybody as ringing styles, um, with more mastery of all of those techniques. So if there's a lack of mastery of the techniques, that becomes the topic for you to hone in on and get everybody up to the speed on all those different techniques and the same level of ability. And the basic form, if you see everyone is playing, correct form with handbells, and you've got one person playing like this, that's an opportunity to work with that person individually or have another experienced ringer pull that person out and get that basic form established. They missed that in level 1 music. Now they need it here in level 2 and beyond. You'll also start seeing some octave doubling in the upper positions. Octaves, not so much 4 in hand, where they have to be able to pick out just the upper notes of 4 in hand or just the lower notes, but being able to play both octaves at the same point for those upper ringers. That's a skill set that they need to be focusing on. The vertical timing continues while performing more complex music. So not just single chords going on, but entrances of a line. They need to be in time all the way through. So I don't know. I don't think we ever get away from practicing vertical timing and trying to improve that, no matter what the level is. Also, in level 2 music, balance of lines becomes required musically. Balancing between melody and accompaniment and the bass line, because I feel like the bass line needs to be a little bit more important sounding than the accompaniment line. It provides the foundation of our sound. So these things, this concept of balance between those parts is something that needs to be worked on, such that they recognize when they have the melody and when they don't, and play accordingly, adjust accordingly. So this is where level 2 music comes in. There are more frequent bell changes, but still we're primarily the put down and pick up technology technique to ring multiple bells. Level 3 music. Characteristics of level 3 music include much more complex rhythms, including some 16th notes, da 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 dum, to that level, for example, or even more lengthy than that. Secondary lines and accompaniment parts are more active. There's less of the same chordal structure as the accompaniment goes along, and more complexity in the tenor line, in the alto line, in the bass line, if I'm looking at the score, for example. The bell changes for level 3, bell changes are common, and a good amount of those are now chromatic, which requires the next level up of multiple bell technique called the weave, W-E-A-V-E, where you perform chromatically, sequentially, da 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 da, 4 bells, 5 bells, 6 bells in a row, whatever it may be. And the technique to quickly and easily perform that is called the weave. It is not the put down, pick up, although you're putting things down and picking them up, but it's more than that. So that is a skill set then with level 3 music that you are needing to teach and have a good amount of expertise in. That one technique, the weave, is by far the biggest reason people do not do level 3 music well, if at all, if they are developing groups. It's that one skill. So if you are wanting to get your group to try to step things up a bit, teach the weave, multiple bell techniques. What else is there in characteristics? There are moderate tempo to fast tempos happening, which means rhythmic needs are increased, and the eye contact and the eye reading skills of looking ahead of where the performance sound is taking place. That is a skill set that needs to be focused on even more. The upper bells need true 4-in-hand skill sets. And that means that while they pick up 2 bells in hand and it's octaves, but the music is calling for just the high note or just the low note sometimes to play. And sometimes they have to go back and forth. Sometimes they have to play them both together. Anything goes with this. So, and overall, music at level 3 is getting much more complex. So here are the potential problems and things to work on. Multiple bell technique. And again, that's number 1, including the weave. 4-in-hand technique is required. The complexity of the rhythms is high, so that one would need to include ease of counting difficult rhythms out loud with the entire group as a skill set. And as you know, with handbells, we don't normally just play a written out rhythm. We play the 5th note of that rhythm and the 12th note of that rhythm with our 1 bell and our hand. And that adds a level of difficulty to reading a complex rhythm, because we need to be able to identify which of our individual notes plays and when it plays and fit it into that. So it's complex. It is complex. Sophistication of the musicality is much higher in level 3 music. There's much more nuance. There are many more retard, accelerandos, just things happening with the music that are that show more complexity. Balance and a mastery of dynamics is required as well. Being able to play pianissimo and then 2 seconds later, fortissimo, and everything in between. Let's see. So those are the characteristics of the level 3. Here's a related need for effective problem solving for level 3 music, or as any music gets more complex. Try to develop, and this is separate from, we're shifting topics a bit, but develop the group identity to emphasize teamwork rather than territorialism. All right. So the territorialist is the bell ringer who's got their bells right here, and they are theirs and theirs only. And when the music calls for them to play their notes, it is theirs to play. It doesn't matter if it's really, really difficult to accomplish, and their neighbors don't have a very complex part, and they're sitting there waiting for that one ringer to get their part done. So territorial person would hold back the full group until they got their part. A team player would pass a bell as needed so that the part can be covered in a shorter amount of rehearsal time. That's an attitude and a skill set. And the skill set involved is the ability to hand pass a bell. And I can demo it for you here. I just happen to have a handbell. All right, so you ring a bell, and to pass a bell to another hand, it's make room for the new hand, slide the new hand up, take over, and let go. So if this is two people, same idea. Held bell, and the next person is playing. All right. Oh, we're doing good. So in summary for all of this, some key thoughts. Know your ringers, their skills, their abilities, their needs, their shortcomings, their expertise levels. Know your ringers. It guides you in so much to be able to do that. Take a sequential and measured approach to developing the skills and musicality needed to advance the group towards the desired goals. So you're taking a sequential approach to chipping away at that which needs correcting on a piece. Chip away at a piece rather than cover to cover a piece. And you develop the skills needed to be successful within those segments of the piece that are very, very hard for the current group. Select the appropriate music that offers reasonable challenges to each ringer. It's actually pretty hard to do that in and of itself. I know I've stood a lot of time fishing through bins of handbell music at various conferences, and I'm looking for pieces of music that fit my other criteria, but I'm also looking to see if it fits the ringer's abilities within my group, and if if it is within reason that I can challenge each ringer to go forward and do well with that. Summary item again here: teach. Next point: teach it again, same thing, but in a different way. Again, what you're trying to do is you recognize that people have different learning styles. They learn differently, and you can teach something one way, and then you still have people that don't understand until you teach it a different way. You probably know that the value of bringing in an outside clinician. If you've done this before, you know the value. The value is that outside clinician comes in and teaches the very same thing that you just got through teaching the previous rehearsal, but they say it in a different way. And all of a sudden the group hears that lesson for the very first time. It's because they heard it from a different perspective. So that's very true. Teaching in multiple directions makes things work better. Hold is also a very important summary item. Hold yourself, each ringer, and the entire group to your concept of quality. Don't let it slip by. If you don't like something, stop the group. Say, we can do better at this section. This is not up to our standards. Let's see what we can do with this. Hold everybody in the room, yourself included, to the highest level of quality that you are wanting to get from that group. And always, I'll end with this, always strive for quality, and especially the integrity of the music. The integrity of the music, Stars and Stripes, it lives at a certain tempo. It does not live at half tempo. If you play a piece at half tempo, you are not performing the piece with great integrity to the music. So find a piece of music that you have that potential of performing at tempo, and keep the integrity, the style, all of that intact as you go. All right. We've got a few minutes left. And so if you have any questions, if you want to throw something in the chat box, I'll try to address those right now. Also, looking ahead, um, we have 2 more sessions, and these are the ones that both Dave Harris and I are going to combine on. Um, I encourage you to come to both of those, of course. The last one is an open Q&A session. So anything that's come up along the way today, you've had a thought after a previous session, and gee, you wish you could ask, that session is for you. So I'll stop there, and I'm looking for any questions. I see none so far. All right. Well, I greatly appreciate you coming today and attending, and your attention. And I hope you've gotten something, even one little tidbit out of this time. And if so, then it's been very well worth it. I appreciate that very much. And um, thank you very much for coming.